I was told there was no room at the Christmas table for my daughter and me, but my sister's neighbors were there with seats saved. I didn't argue, just showed them the gifts and left. My mother was shouting, "Don't leave." My dad begged me to talk, but Christmas dinner was already halfway over when I realized there was no seat for me. Not an accident, not an oversight. The table was full, chairs pushed close, plates already smeared with gravy and half-eaten ham. I stood in the doorway with my daughter, Ellie, holding the gifts we'd wrapped the night before, and no one moved. Amanda made eye contact, then quickly looked away. My mom was laughing at something one of the neighbors said. My dad gave me a brief nod, like he just remembered I existed. I didn't say anything. I just stood there like some distant relative who had shown up uninvited. There were people I didn't even recognize sitting at the table. Neighbors, friends of Amanda's, maybe. One of them had their coat on the back of what was clearly the last available chair. My daughter tugged at my sleeve, confused. I told her we'd just drop off the gifts. I walked over to the tree, placed the bags down carefully, made sure the card with the envelope was still sealed tight. Then I turned to leave. That's when my mom yelled across the room, loud enough to stop the conversation. "Don't go!" My dad stood up suddenly, knocking into someone's plate. He called out my name, said we should talk, but by then, Ellie was already pulling her boots back on. The ride home was quiet except for the sound of wrapping paper rustling in the back seat. It wasn't always like this, but everything shifted after my husband left me. He didn't just leave. He moved in with the woman who lives one block over, Jenna, the same woman who once borrowed my slow cooker and returned it with dried onions still crusted on the lid. My mom's reaction. She said it made sense that Jenna took care of herself. After that, it was like my entire family decided I was defective. My sister stopped inviting me to anything unless she needed help setting up. My parents laughed when I said I was going back to school. My dad kept asking if I was done sulking yet. They treated me like the failure who got left, like I was embarrassing them by existing without a man. But what they didn't know, sitting there with their wine glasses and strangers in my place, was that they had just missed the biggest gift they were ever going to get. There was a check inside one of those gifts, $10,000. And that was only the beginning. 2 hours after I left Amanda's house, my phone started buzzing. First it was my mom, then my dad, then Amanda. I didn't answer. I sat on the couch with Ellie watching the same Christmas movie we'd watched 3 nights in a row. She kept asking why we had to leave so soon. I told her we'd celebrate just the 2 of us this year. I told her it was special this way. The truth was, I didn't trust myself to talk to any of them without saying something I couldn't take back. Not yet. It took less than 24 hours for Amanda to text again. She asked if I could come back by and pick up the gifts I left. Said they didn't want to accidentally open the wrong ones. I stared at her message for a long time before deleting it. They thought I was bluffing, that I was being sensitive, that I'd come crawling back like always. Then, Christmas night at 9:47 p.m., I got the first real reaction. My dad called 3 times in a row, left a voicemail on the 4th. He sounded panicked. Said something about the envelope, said I needed to call him immediately. I didn't, because the envelope they found wasn't just a card. Inside was a short note. To help with the roof, Merry Christmas. And a check for $10,000 made out to my parents. No strings attached, no explanation, just a gift I had planned quietly for months while they mocked me behind my back. A gift I was ready to give them even after everything until I saw those strangers in my seat. By the next morning, I had 11 missed calls, 2 long voicemails from my mom crying, and a desperate message from Amanda that just said, "Are you serious?" I didn't reply. I logged into my accounts instead and canceled the 3 automatic payments I had set up to cover their internet, their electricity, and a credit card my mom had once opened just to get the rewards. They never remembered I was the one keeping those lights on. They were about to find out. At 2:12 p.m., my dad tried calling again. Then he texted, "We need to talk. Please, you don't understand what's going on." Oh, I understood perfectly. They didn't want me there, but they wanted what I brought. That's what burned the most. Not the lack of a chair, not the strangers they'd chosen over me, but the certainty that even now, with everything unraveling, they still didn't think they'd done anything wrong. But I was done giving, and I hadn't even told them about the second surprise yet. I didn't answer any calls the day after Christmas or the next. I watched them come in. First my dad, then Amanda, then even my Uncle Dave, like they were passing my number around like a crisis hotline. I kept the volume low and let each one ring out. They had finally opened the envelope. At first, I pictured them just tossing my gifts to the side like always, expecting bath bombs and a scented candle. But when they found the check, $10,000, signed, dated, sitting in a card with no sarcasm, no bitterness, something must have shifted because that's when the panic started. And that's when I knew it was time. The second surprise wasn't as sweet as the first. It wasn't wrapped. It didn't have a bow, but it would hit harder because it was about control, quiet control I had held onto for years without ever using it. My name was on more than they remembered. I logged into the bank account my dad used, technically mine too, from back when I helped them refinance the house. I moved the remaining balance to my own account and closed it. Then I pulled the plug on 3 recurring payments they didn't even know I'd been covering: their cell phone plan, their internet, and their electric bill. My mom used to call me when the power flickered, assuming I had the answer. My dad never even knew how the bills were being paid. They just assumed someone else handled the details. Well, that someone just stepped out. I got my first call from Amanda at 10:14 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted me from her husband's number an hour later. She asked if I had messed with something because the internet was down and Mom's phone said the account was frozen. I told her they should probably call their provider. Then I sent the real hit, an email to both of my parents with a scanned copy of the disassociation papers my lawyer had helped me draft earlier in the month. A clean break. No shared credit, no co-signed loans, no financial entanglements. I wasn't just walking away, I was locking the door behind me. By the end of the day, I had 8 voicemails, 3 blocked numbers, and 1 email from my dad that simply said, "Please." We didn't know. Didn't know what? Didn't know that I saw the way they looked at me after he left? That I noticed how they invited everyone but me to dinners? How they praised Jenna for stepping up while acting like I hadn't held the family together with both hands for years? No, they knew. They just didn't care until it cost them something. Now it was costing them everything. And I hadn't even told them the full story yet. By the morning of the 28th, they weren't even pretending to be mad anymore. My mom called me from Amanda's phone and left a message that started with, "I know you're angry," and ended with her sobbing. My dad sent me a voice memo where he said the words, "I messed up," for the first time in my life. I didn't respond. The guilt wasn't real. It was just survival. They'd lived for years in a system where I quietly paid for their mistakes, absorbed their cruelty, and kept the lights on without needing thanks. Now that system had collapsed, they were scared. Not sorry, just scared. Amanda showed up at my place around noon. She didn't text first. She just knocked. When I opened the door, she tried to walk past me into the house. I didn't let her. She said they were all falling apart and asked what I wanted, like I was holding them hostage. I told her there was no negotiation. That's when she said it. "You think you're above us now just because you wrote a check?" That made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because of how far off she still was. The money wasn't about control. It was supposed to be help, a peace offering, a gift. It was the last good thing I was willing to give them. Amanda left furious, muttering something about family being forever, as if that hadn't already been shattered under their own roof. By evening, I had 3 more emails from my dad, each more desperate than the last. He said they couldn't reach the utility company, that the service desk kept bouncing them back and forth, said they didn't have passwords, didn't know what to say, that they couldn't access their own account because it had been created with my email address 10 years ago. Then he asked for help. He wrote, "Just show us what to do, then we'll leave you alone." That part actually made me stop for a minute because that was the truth, hidden in the middle of everything. They never saw me as part of them, just someone nearby, a convenience, a spare. I went upstairs, sat with Ellie while she built a puzzle, and thought about what I'd do next. I had one final piece, one thing they really wouldn't expect. I sent a group email to everyone, my parents, Amanda, a few of the cousins who'd sat frozen at that dinner table while all of it happened. Subject line, "Since you all wanted surprises this Christmas." The message was short. I know some of you were aware of what's been said and done behind my back. I stayed quiet for a long time, but I won't be part of this anymore. You'll find out more tomorrow morning. Then I attached the PDF. They'd all know exactly what it meant when they opened it because on the first page was the title, "Notice of Severance, Family and Financial Disassociation, Effective Immediately." I expected silence, or maybe more crying. Maybe Amanda would post something passive-aggressive online. Maybe my mom would send some long apology I'd never read. But what I got was different, scarier, and messier. The email hit like a grenade. not just for my parents, but the entire family group chat, which I wasn't in, but someone forwarded me screenshots. People were stunned. A few were angry. Most stayed quiet. The subject line alone was enough to rattle them. And the document, severance from all financial and personal obligation, was cold, clear, and final. I expected a reaction. What I didn't expect was desperation that turned into something darker. It started with Amanda, 10 texts in a row. One of them actually said, "This isn't you. You're not this cruel." I almost laughed. Then she sent me a photo of my mom sitting on the couch crying, like that would make me forget the years of eye rolls and whispered jokes about how I wasn't strong enough to keep a man. I didn't respond. Around midnight, my email account was hit. Someone tried to reset the password. Gmail flagged the attempt. Same zip code as my parents, same service provider. I changed every password I had and activated two-step authentication on everything. Then I checked the shared Netflix account and saw it had been logged into 5 minutes earlier. I removed every device but mine. That was just the beginning. The next morning, Ellie's school called me. The secretary sounded confused. She said someone claiming to be my mother had called and said I had approved her to be the new emergency contact and asked if she could take over pickup that week. My stomach dropped. I told them absolutely not. I removed every name on the list but mine, added a password phrase to the account so no one could impersonate me again. They weren't just panicking now, they were trying to claw their way back into control. I spent that afternoon on the phone with my lawyer. I told him everything, the login attempts, the school interference, the sudden obsession with regaining access. He said it was good. I had proof that if they escalated, we could file for protective clauses, not just financial, but physical if needed. I hated that it had come to this, but I wasn't scared, just angry, more than I'd ever let myself be. That evening, Amanda came again. I saw her through the camera on my porch. She brought my dad this time. It was snowing lightly, and they were bundled up in the same winter gear I bought them last year. They didn't ring the bell right away. They just stood there for a few minutes, like they thought I'd feel guilty if I saw them waiting in the cold. Then they rang twice. I didn't answer. I watched from the window upstairs. Ellie was already asleep. Then my dad stepped forward and said loud enough for the whole street, "It wasn't just us. She knew everything. Jenna." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. He looked up toward the window. I didn't blink. Then he said, "She was at the Thanksgiving meeting. They planned it." I had no idea what he meant at first. I hadn't gone to Thanksgiving. They told me not to bother. Said it was too soon after the divorce and everyone needed space. But now he was saying Jenna was there with my family. Planning what? They left 5 minutes later after I turned the porch light off. I sat in the dark thinking about what he said. The neighbors, the chairs at Christmas, the weird timing of everything, the smirks, the envelope, planned. It was never just about ignoring me. It was something else, something I hadn't seen coming. I didn't cry when I found out my husband had been sitting at my family's Thanksgiving table with Jenna. I didn't yell either. I just sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, feeling something shift permanently inside me. I wasn't shocked. Not anymore. It just confirmed what I'd already started to understand. It had never been about forgetting me. It had been about replacing me. That morning, I called my lawyer again and gave him the go-ahead to complete the disassociation papers, financial, legal, and personal. Everything that connected me to them in any way. No more shared utilities, no co-signed anything, no loose threads. We filed everything within 48 hours. It was official. My parents lost access to every convenience I used to quietly give them. Internet gone, phone plans gone, credit line I'd opened for emergencies, closed. They would have to start from scratch, just like I had 2 months earlier when my husband vanished from our life overnight. Only now they didn't have me. That was fair. So I needed to do one last thing. I didn't want to leave things open-ended. I didn't want them to spin the story later, pretend they didn't know why I cut them off, to say it was sudden or that I had snapped. So I called them, both of them, together. I said it was the last time I'd speak to them, and I meant it. My mom answered. My dad was already on speaker. I said calmly that I knew everything now, that I knew about Thanksgiving, that I knew Jenna was there, that I knew my husband sat at their table while they laughed and passed around cranberry sauce, pretending they hadn't chosen sides, that they invited the woman he cheated with and disinvited the woman he left. They didn't deny it. My dad mumbled something about not wanting more drama, and my mom started crying. She said she thought I'd be too emotional if I saw him. I reminded her I had been covering their bills, that I had a check under that tree, $10,000 to fix their house, that I brought it even after everything, and they still picked her. Then I told her I canceled the check. I told her the bank confirmed it. They'd never see that money, not $1, and their roof would leak until they figured out how to fix it themselves. They got quiet. I told them one last thing, that I had written everything down, every call, every bill, every cruel comment. Every time they laughed when I talked about Ellie's therapy or told me to stop making a scene, I had it all. And if they ever tried to spin the story to anyone, I'd make sure the truth was louder. She asked if I was serious. I said I was, and that this call was the last favor I'd ever do for them. Then I hung up. After that, I blocked their numbers. I left the family group chat for good. I deleted all the shared calendar invites, turned off the reminders for birthdays, removed every photo of them from my phone. Ellie and I started over. On New Year's Eve, I made homemade pizza and let her stay up past midnight. We danced in the living room. She asked if we were still going to Grandma's house someday. I said no, not anymore, but that we could build a new kind of family now, one that didn't make us feel small. It didn't happen all at once, but the weight slowly lifted. I slept better. I didn't jump when my phone buzzed. I stopped rehearsing arguments in my head. The silence felt strange at first. Then it felt like peace. The past didn't vanish, but I didn't carry it anymore. And that was the gift I gave myself. Mini update, 6 weeks later. I didn't hear anything for a while. Not a word from Amanda. Not a call from my parents. Not even a passive-aggressive post I'd have to pretend not to understand. It was like they'd all vanished. I thought maybe they finally got it. That maybe they'd leave me alone for good. Then last Friday, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was from my dad. He didn't apologize. He didn't even mention Ellie. The letter was short, just a few lines. He said the house was getting worse, said they tried to get a loan, but their credit wasn't strong enough without my name. He wrote, "It was never supposed to go this far." I didn't respond. Not because I wasn't tempted. I was, for about 5 minutes. But I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it in a drawer I rarely open. I don't need to burn it. I just don't need to carry it anymore. Ellie's doing better. She started smiling more at school, making up silly games again. We made a new tradition last week. Every Friday we go out for pancakes no matter what. Just the two of us. Last time, she told me it was her favorite day of the week. That's all I needed to know. I made the right decision. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stop proving your worth to people who already decided to ignore it.